Good morning, everyone. I'm Pam Tipton. I'm Senior Director of Custom Programs here at Executive Education for Goizueta Business School at Emory University, and we are so glad to have you with us this morning. And as I said a few moments ago, we're talking about navigating change today. So navigating change is one of the toughest tasks that leaders and managers often face, and many well-intentioned change initiatives fail. Not due to resource constraints or lack of leadership support, or even by neglecting employee buy-in, but due to a lack of conscious leadership practice of discovery, getting curious about the matter at hand. Albert Einstein once said, "I have no special talent, I only am passionately curious." He believed the mind that opens to a new idea never returns to its original state. And in business, curiosity can be infused into everyday practices in the form of discovery. To succeed at creating and fostering change, leaders need to master discovery as an inventive process, especially for change that involves rethinking and reimagining practices and expectations. So with this context in mind, we are really excited to welcome one of the world's foremost experts in change, Karen Golden-Biddle, for an engaging session that will really illuminate the power of embracing a discovery mindset. Karen will also be sharing some actionable strategies to integrate discovery into our work and life. So Karen is Professor Emerita in Management and Organization at Boston University's Questrom School of Business. She conducts research and teaches at the graduate and executive level in the areas of cultural change and qualitative methodology. She's published 3 books and authored more than 60 articles and book chapters in a number of noteworthy management journals and publications. Her recently released book, and one of the primary reasons we are so excited to welcome her today, is The Untapped Power of Discovery. And it's for leaders at all levels inside the organization, helping to make good use of the unexpected in a way that delivers results and positive change. So as with all of our webinars, Karen welcomes questions throughout, but she'll spend about 30 to 35 minutes sharing her insights. We invite you to post your questions to the Q&A box. It helps us keep those a little better organized, but you're also welcome to post them to chat. And we'll try to get to as many of those as possible. She does welcome those questions throughout her presentation this morning. And of course, before I hand things over to Karen, I'd love to highlight just a couple of things going on here at Executive Education. As we've mentioned in our last couple of webinars, registration applications are currently being accepted for the Goizueta Executive Women's Leadership Program. It is designed to help participants articulate a clear strategic direction, gain insight and influence to navigate the corporate landscape, and communicate with compelling narratives that really help break leaders through some of their derailers. Also open for registration are our credit-bearing MBA level courses. You don't have to receive the credit, but for those that might be interested, and it's a great way to dip your toe in the water if you're curious about what it might be to get an MBA, or if you're looking for a refresher. We invite you to check out our website for these and other course offerings, and one of the members of our team will be posting things to the chat. Thanks for joining us today, and Karen, we are super excited to have you with us. So I am handing it over to you.
Thank you so much, Pam. I really appreciate it. And I'm delighted to take part today in Emory's Business Over Breakfast, very cool title, webinar series. So thank you for the very kind and generous introduction today. I do welcome questions, and there will be a couple times where we're actually going to have vignettes and then have a kind of a question answer after that during the middle of my presentation. So please add those questions to the chat. So I should say hello to everyone online, if I can see you. Hello to everyone online, and thank you for taking the time today to participate in this webinar. I look forward to the question and answers together. You may wonder how the title Return to Discovery came about. People usually think of discovery as an end result, maybe they think of Discovery Channel, or, if you Google it, you find that, and maybe the discovery process in legal settings, but mostly it's the end result, like a breakthrough technology, a novel vaccines, a new product innovation. So what has happened as a result of some sort of effort around that? However, that's a really limiting view of discovery. It actually limits the creative power of discovery because of all the assumptions that are part of it, that only certain people are creative, that only certain areas in an organization do creative work. And so that's why we're returning to discovery, coming back to discovery today, but we're going to look at it in a totally different way, a way that unleashes discovery's creative power for navigating change of all types: personal, organizational, and community. So I just want to say this, one of the stories that I've looked at in depth is the eradicating guinea worm disease right here with the Carter Center in Atlanta. An amazing, amazing story that used discovery along the way. So we'll come back to that. The other piece I'd like to suggest at this point is you might want to have a change in mind that you're currently navigating, and that you'd like some way to kind of try out and see if there's a way that discovery could help. I mean, discovery really is suited to any time we want to adjust or change beliefs and practices in some way. So cultural change, for example. But it can be, and we'll talk about the beliefs, it can be many other kinds of things. But it helps to think about a change in mind, maybe one that you've had in the past where you'd like to do better, or one you're doing currently that you're in the midst of the struggles and joys that accompany all change. So we're going to explore discovery today. I'm going to share 2 vignettes of leaders and to show how they unleashed the power of discovery. So we're going to grab some actionable strategies from those vignettes. And then, as I said, please put questions in the chat as we go along. So I have an invitation. I invite you with me to return to discovery today, to step back and use this wonderful experimental space of the webinar to explore this new way of understanding that we're going to talk about around discovery, to ask questions about it today, to identify actions you could try out on Monday, to consider how you might integrate it into your leadership practice. So I'm going to, at this point, share my slides and get moving on that. So here we go. So I'll be small for a little bit. I know the little box kind of thing, and then we'll come back for the others that are going on. So return to discovery. We're going to see discovery as an inventive process. So it's it brings a creative power to the efforts. It's an inventive process. There's some reasons why it's inventive, and I'm glad to talk about that. We're not going to talk about it today, but if you're interested in kind of the basis of what makes discovery creative, I'm glad to share that, the logic and the narrative associated with it. So it's an inventive process. By that, I mean the process unfolds over time. It's not an end result. So it's very different from looking at discovery as an end result. It's a process that evolves and unfolds over time in any other kind of initiative you're doing. So this is not a new change model. This is a model that can be used, it's a process that can be used with any other kinds of, in the midst of change that you're doing. In fact, a number of studies that I've looked at over time have used discovery with lean management, for example, to bring that creativity, to marry the evaluative and the creative together. So the discovery is creative, and by that I mean it helps us generate ahas, insights, new perspectives, new understandings, and new beliefs and practices. It is also different from evaluative processes, and both are present in organizations. Evaluative processes are those things that make their performance appraisal, it's production planning, goal setting. So they make things systematic, they bring a discipline, they monitor, maybe measure. It's those kinds of functions. And so both are together. And so whereas evaluative would stabilize what's going on, inventive disrupts it. It's emergence, it's dynamic around. So those are their difference. In science, the evaluative would be validation. So that's the equivalent there. The key is that organizations need both inventive and evaluative processes. But pressures for prediction and stability have led organizations to overemphasize evaluative processes. That's when discovery gets lost. We hide discovery in organizations. For example, we assign it to special departments, research and development. Or we designate it to certain roles, such as designers. Management education also gives priority to evaluative processes. So I'm on, not a bandwagon, but I am passionate about discovery because I have seen through the number of stories and real situations where it makes a huge difference, and we just simply have overlooked it. And really trying to help people cultivate the practice of discovery in their leadership. Because we know when we bring together the inventive and evaluative processes, when they work together as a keystone of our organizational systems, we produce stronger solutions. That's clear from the research. So we're going to focus today on what does it take to unleash discovery's power? How do leaders, amidst this context of overemphasis on evaluative processes, how do they unleash the power of discovery? So I'm going to go through the first vignette that we're looking at. And as I talk about it and share some of the words of the leaders involved in their actions, think about what you might resonate with that you could use, what actionable strategies are embedded in these vignettes. The first vignette concerns Intuit. It's an older story, but ever so relevant, about processing survey results. So Intuit annually served customers of Quicken their home financial product, that was their first product, about their use of the product. One item asked where customers were when they used Quicken, and about half replied they use Quicken in the office. Cook's response, that's weird. These are his words. We built a home product. They're probably just taking their bills into the office because they don't have a computer at home. The team didn't think any more about these surprising, unexpected survey results. Until subsequent follow-up surveys again showed half of their customers used Quicken at work. Cook responded, "It made no sense. We ignored it. I ignored it." This trend continued. The still unexpected yet very now persistent survey response started to nag at Cook. Why, he asked, are people answering this question wrong? Well, the leadership team decided at that juncture, since it was persistent and it wasn't going away and they couldn't push it aside, that they would go to their customers' workplaces to find out, to figure out what was going on. There, the team discovered something that didn't make sense to them. They observed practice of their customers that they said, quote, they had never imagined. Customers were using Quicken, the home financial product, to keep books for their small businesses. Cook's reflection on that. Something else was true, very different from our own beliefs. Intuit's belief was that customers should use formal accounting methods to keep written records of business finances. And that belief clashed with customers' actual practice of accounting in their small businesses. The Intuit team gained important insight into an unseen customer product need, which in turn led to the development of QuickBooks, which remains the company's major product today. Said Cook, a few decades later, in an Inc. magazine article, he said, only when we started focusing on the surprise, savoring. So he's not just saying engaging or looking at or asking questions about it. He's actually saying savoring the surprise. Did we discover this giant market opportunity? So think a little bit. I'm going to share some about, so how did they unleash this discovery? Like how did they unleash discovery's power and the process to generate this new product opportunity? Right? All the elements are here. And if we can think about it, what I would say is that they did two things. They did many other things, but I would love to see in chat some things that you would think about. So maybe let's take a second at this moment to generate some chat questions. And Pam, maybe we can take a look at some of those.
So Karen, we don't have anything coming in just yet into the chat, but what we do have is a question in Q&A.
Okay.
And this may be premature, so it's okay if you want to hold this question until later and we can just keep going. But Gary asks, what technique do I use to discover if I need to change or discover a new way to grow?
So would that be a personal growth?
So Gary, if you'll pop into the chat, given some of the other questions I've known Gary to ask in prior webinars, I would offer that probably professionally. And then if that bleeds into personal, that's great.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're going to look at in both of these vignettes is when we're attuned to experiences and how they impact us. So it's this notion of the connection between our beliefs and experiences. And when there's a tug, it's maybe like experience teaches us by means of surprise. So surprise or other kinds of disruptions a little bit doesn't really quite describe it, but surprises, niggling feelings that we would have, if we can not dismiss those, but kind of take them in and start to explore them, that may be an opportunity and a path for growth at a particular time. And we can certainly talk more about that. And that's actually what we can look at with Intuit, because what I love in part about this story, they didn't love it as they were doing it. They derailed discovery all the way through to the point where they went to see the customer, what they were actually doing. They dismissed it. They called it wrong, what the customers were doing. They answered the question wrong, Cook said. So all along, they just put it out of sight. And we do that. I do that. We all do it all the time. And so the key is not to stop doing it all the time, but to start to say, when do we want to pay attention to it? And when do we need to pay attention to surprises that may impinge us, or little like, what happened here? Or boy, that went against the grain, or boy, I was taken aback by that. All those kind of phrases are clues that a surprise has started to impinge on us, our beliefs in some way. And we're going to talk in just a little bit Beliefs, I don't mean in terms of religious or political beliefs. I mean, you can go there. What I'm talking about are the regular organizational beliefs, our personal beliefs that we hold about how we do things.
And Karen, one of our listeners posted, and for some reason it's disappeared from my view of the chat, but posted that importantly, Intuit was essentially humble enough to recognize that they didn't have the right answer. Amy noted the same thing. It's about being open to not assuming that you have the one and only right answer. And then Sarah comments that when you're uncomfortable with the results, dig in.
Yeah,
and I love that.
That's an opportunity, right? It's
Exactly.
Absolutely. And those results were surprising. So there was a big clue right then and to dig in. And our natural inclination is to move away from that. But it is really an opportunity to open up and explore with discovery forward to that. I really love that. The other thing that's interesting is you're raising this fallibility of knowledge. And so as professionals, we are taught to know. We know we're experts, number of things. But we're not taught to not know. We've not been taught how to not know. And so your suggestions just now are ways to go in by presuming that we don't have all the answers. A colleague of mine recently said, well, you need to argue as if you are right and listen as if you are wrong. So it's this confident humility that Adam Grant talks about as well that is so critical to being able to move into what we don't know so that we can then generate new perspectives. We can see what we haven't seen that has been right in front of our eyes. So terrific, that's great. And I think I would pick up on what you've just talked about with this notion of that one of the central aspects of unleashing the power of discovery is our willingness to challenge and perhaps change beliefs. It's the single most important capacity we can develop. And the ways that you were just using that to dig in, or as Cook talks about, savor the surprise, you're making friends with it. That is just such a anathema, especially when we used to have a lot more of this no surprise management kind of stuff, right? Like, don't bring me any surprises without, or problems without a possible solution or surprises.
Hey, Karen,
Yes.
before you move past this slide, Noelle's asked a really interesting question. And that is that some team members tend to focus only on the surprises because there is this constant pressure to innovate and to find new ideas. So how do you help teams kind of find that balance between always looking for the surprise and never paying attention to the surprise?
Yeah, that's one of the downsides of this notion of continuous transformation, that companies are trying to, a culture of continuous, like, oh my goodness, we're going to be on the run all the time with that. I think with teams and surprises, it's important to know what to do with the surprises, our response to them. And so we can, I've seen team leaders use the surprises and say, we're going to go down a path for a very short period of time to see if it bears fruit. It may be a blind alley, but we won't know that, but we're going to make a quick trip in to decide whether we go further or not. And so that helps that there's some methodology, you might say, for taking those surprises, and they get used to them, the team does, moving in only provisionally and only for a short time to assess the merits of it for going further. And that has really reduced the chaos that's associated with surprises popping in everywhere to know what to do. I want to also talk a little bit. So in order to unleash discovery's power, we do need to be willing to challenge and change. And the challenge, we can challenge, and we have the option whether to change or not. So the idea is we could challenge, really means to explore, to kind of entertain, savor, engage it, to kind of see what beliefs of mine might it be tapping into. So these can be beliefs as an intuit about customer behavior. They could be beliefs about how to manage employees or treat employees. Recently, I've just been enthralled with the whole discussion of return to the office, hybrid work, so forth, but beliefs about where and how to work. And if we could tap, and I keep thinking, use discovery to help work that issue in our organizations, we'd be able to access some better solutions. So we've got the willingness to challenge is the single most important one. And I just want to echo, I don't remember your name, but it was the one who kind of hinted at confident humility. We need to both know something and not know, and recognize that we don't know things, but also that some of the things that we know may be in error. And that's what these situations, the surprising situations, the disturbing situations, the challenging situations, help us see, are our beliefs in error? And beliefs I really think of as habits of expectation. Like what do we expect as a regular kind of thing around this? How do we expect employees to behave? What does it look like to assure that employees are working even though they're outside of our realm of sight? So all those are questions to ask as we challenge and look at how we might change our beliefs. So that's the Intuit case. I wonder, Pam, if you see, or anyone has any other questions about the Intuit case. We're going to go on to a separate case, and then we'll look at some comparison across the two. But now might be a time, if there are any, Pam.
No, go ahead, Karen.
Okay, great. All right. So we're going to look at a vignette that's in the healthcare system. That is mapping high-level patient care flows, and it really was part of a strategic system. So I'm trying to provide two different examples. One is emergent in a survey situation, evaluative process actually that they were doing, that they then interrupted to be able to pair the evaluative process with the discovery process. This one is also going to have an emergent element, but it really at the beginning was a strategy setting, so very different, and they were looking to better understand the future relevance of their hospital system. So Catherine Correa, hospital system president, and her team at Delta Care provide further insight into how to unleash discovery. So as part of this strategic planning effort, she convened a multi-stakeholder 4-day lean event to, quote, figure out the hospital at the very highest levels of care. Now, by broad stakeholder group, I mean clinicians, staff, leadership, board members, patients who have given their okay to participate, and volunteers. Going into the process, everyone expected that they would learn that they were mostly delivering care consistent with their belief, that it was integrated and patient-focused. They also believed that they would quickly identify issues that would be easily addressed to improve patient care. So then they began by mapping care flows. So as part of a lean process, so they are bringing together discovery and the evaluative process very nicely for the year. At the time when they first began, they didn't use the word discovery, but there were all kinds of hints that discovery was happening as I was in the field studying this organization. We were taken aback, just a number of ways that they would express things that led me to think maybe discovery was happening. They divided into they had an outside consultant. They divided into 3 groups: inpatient, outpatient, and emergency, as you might imagine. And they used whiteboards. So everybody was mapping in the rooms, it's separate rooms along huge whiteboards, and they were mapping these care flows and looking at the transitions, the handoffs, all the things that you would look at to map the care flows. except they couldn't map. They were all surprised that they couldn't map. The mapping exercise, the project manager said, is at a very high level, yet you could still see fragmentation of care at that very high level. They could only imagine what it looked like if they were to go further down the levels. So when they reconvened, they were frustrated at not being able to map these flows clearly. Clearly, their belief was that they were going to be able to do this. Instead of integrated flowcharts, their maps looked more like unfinished puzzles with parts strewn around. They really had not anticipated that they would struggle with mapping the work that they engaged in every day. They couldn't figure it out. Well, this, as one of you mentioned, is an opportunity right now for discovery when experience challenges our beliefs. So they had some options, and we will look at this in just a second. They had some options with this. They could ignore the difficulties and move on. They could suggest that it was an artifact of the exercise. And so that that didn't happen in real life, they would say, it's just the exercise. They could have delegated it to others and forgotten about it. Or they could have done a literature review and sought what others did when they reached this kind of situation in their own clinics and hospital systems. So the question is, they recognized the difficulty. I mean, it hit them in the face, right? They could not say that they didn't have difficulty mapping the care flows. The question then becomes, so we have the recognition part. How do we respond to them? How did they respond to them? Did they respond? Our responses, which is a key thing that we can do. It doesn't seem like it's an actionable strategy, but it is essential for discovery to know how we respond to situations that challenge our beliefs. And do we respond to them to derail discovery? We can censor ideas. We can explain away contrary evidence. We can ignore clues forever to things that are going on. Those are just some of the ways that we derail discovery, some of the behaviors we use to derail discovery. And actually, one of the actionable strategies from today would be to look at how you and also others in meetings and other situations derail discovery. That is pretty prominent, actually. So we could respond to them by derailing it without knowing. It's unintentional. We're not trying to do it for the most part. But what would it look like to respond to this experience for discovery, to ignite or catalyze discovery's power? So they did have options. What they did was ask questions, a simple yet profound strategy of action. But they asked questions from a discovery mindset. So they didn't ask like a prosecuting attorney. They didn't ask general questions, open, closed. They didn't even ask, they didn't presume to know the answer, as one of you've talked about already. The questions for it to be a discovery mindset need to not know the answer to it. So we don't just answer, and we don't ask a question just to be affirmed by someone else that I have the correct answer to it, or the question. So they really needed to not know. And so they asked questions. Could the mapping difficulties signal real issues? Could the patients really have hardships? I mean, the mapping reflected patient hardships for them. They clearly were distraught through this example. It went against some of their own codes of care. They moved by asking the questions into the realm of not knowing. And so with discovery-oriented questions, that opens us up to this realm of not knowing, and we can even try to have a permission structure to help explore that. Subsequently to this, through their conversation and thinking about how they would proceed, they decided to explore by walking the actual care flows of the patients to see for themselves. And so with the help of their organization development person inside the organization, the physicians and nurses, they took away any kind of medical garb. They just literally walked one-on-one with patients who agreed to do that. And when not, they walked with a staff member in that unit to be able to walk the care flow. Because the issue really for clinicians, especially, was that they knew what they were doing in their own unit, but it was this other units that they didn't, the transitions and the handoffs, that they didn't fully really grasp and understand because they hadn't worked in those, what was going on. So that was part of the issue. What they discovered, flow was fragmented. And they changed their belief then. The mapping care flows were difficult because of disconnects, these missed transitions and handoffs that caused real patient hardships. I mean, there were elderly and very sick patients who had to walk, for example, a long way to go from the doctor's office to get lab tests and which they just weren't aware of. We may ask how they weren't aware of it, but it is in the daily kinds of things. It's in front of us, it's hidden and not yet seen. So this really opened up their eyes for that. And I wanted to show you one of the things that I've done, whether it's helpful, we can talk about it for you. This is how I would map and how I've done that in the book for the different stories to kind of show this. It's not like you don't need to do this diagram in the setting, but basically what happened at Delta Care was they went through 5 cycles of discovery and they ended up transforming their healthcare model and really bringing forward an innovative patient care model that got great attention nationally. Articles have been written about it. People have come to visit to say, how do they reproduce it? And my own little inclination here is to say, you reproduce it with discovery, your own discovery, right? To kind of take this and put it on your own place, like a best practice, and just kind of plop it into a context doesn't work. So here we have they engaged this unexpected situation. The next step that they did was deepen their understanding of this unexpected situation. And then they moved on for 3 more cycles till they created these new ways, fundamentally new ways of delivering patient care. But what we see here is the original belief that they had was that mapping care flows was going to be a straightforward exercise. And their surprise came because it was more difficult than expected. And it's at that juncture that they asked, what does this mean? Rather than presuming to know what it meant. And then down below, the difficulty in managing and mapping the flows. And what, again, kind of asking questions, you're in doubt, questions. When you ask questions from a discovery mindset, you go into doubt, and it's a wonderfully generative space. We could talk long on harnessing genuine doubt. But for now, I'll just say that it's question-based, or you're going to try to generate even models, hypothetical entities of something you're trying to produce. So they actually did produce on paper kind of a model of their care that involved significant alteration of the way clinicians were interacting with each other and interacting with the patients. So it ended up to be very strong clinical outcomes as well as relational outcomes in this innovation. Then they said flow is fragmented. That was their discovery. We are deeply disturbed by it. They found that from walking the care flows, not unlike Intuit when they went to the customers' locations. Walking with is an extremely helpful strategy for trying to figure out what's going on in the situation. So you go with an intent to discover. You don't go with an intent to confirm what you know, right? So it's really critical. Your vantage point, your perspective is an intent to discover. That they revised their beliefs so that mapping care flows is difficult. They recognize that due to real obstacles that cause patient hardship. We need to minimize the obstacles in care. So what you would see are, and I do it in the book, there are 5 cycles that they go through, and each time you can see this new belief becomes the original belief, and they have another cycle. Now, they did not set out to do 5 cycles. They just did what they needed to do to get to the point, and each one took them further. I mean, there was one cycle that was wonderful, the next cycle, where the clinicians said, oh my goodness, we're mapping care flows now at the next level down. We can see how patients get into our hospital system, but we don't know how they get out. And to admit with a we don't know how to get out is a doubt realm for that. And it opened up that was the breakthrough for this incredibly new and innovative and positively impacting on patients model of care. So that is the Delta Care example. And maybe, Pam, if there are questions, we could take a few now.
Yes, Karen, there's actually one that was posed before you stepped into this vignette, and I wanted to hold it because not knowing the specific vignette, I thought it might apply here as well.
Mm-hmm.
And hang on, let me go back up there, is that, these are great examples. Steve says that how does the rate of expected change differ given that, for example, the Quicken scenario was in the 90s versus the rate of change that's happening now, and all organizations needing to pay attention or do things differently given that speed of change?
So you just have to, great question. And definitely with the speed of change, and these, some take longer or shorter. And I don't have it with me right here. Maybe I can pull it up. You can just go to Microsoft and take a look because they do discovery in spades. They use growth mindset. They talk about moving from a know-it-all to a learn-it-all culture. Satya Nadella in 2014, when he became CEO, he said, and let me see if I can pull it up here. I think he explained the key challenge for the organization, which they really have been addressing for the next 10 years. I think we have operated as if we had the formula figured out. And it was all about optimizing in its various constituent parts that formula. Now it is about discovering the new formula. And they went from, I mean, I don't need to go into a great deal about this, obviously, but the know-it-all cultures are all those who think they're right and don't have the confident humility or the fallibility of knowledge to see that others are wrong. And in fact, they would compete with each other internally. There were lots of beliefs and practices associated with what Satya called the old formula that got in the way of innovation. So the change really was around working together. So the leaders and employees together brought this the evaluative and the inventive processes. And he did use growth mindset. There are other ways to, and that's a discovery kind of notion. Together to really, it's a stronghold of their organizational systems today, of both of them coming forward. So you can innovate, be flexible, and you can stabilize. So it's both of those. I think the danger comes when we have only an inventive focus going forward. There is way too much chaos around that. So we need to balance, again, those of you in the change area, this is not new by any means, but it brings home a deeper kind of understanding of it with discovery to say we need continuity and change. And so how do we have the continuity, which is often in the beliefs and the meanings created and stories in organizations, as well as the change that happens. So I'm excited about that. I would go to Microsoft. There are others that I'm watching as well to really, and that is a multinational corporation, obviously, where they're moving through every system, their HR systems, operational systems, other kinds of systems, to even the idea of teams in the prior culture not collaborating and not sharing software codes. That was happening. That has changed. So all at that level, all the practices and beliefs are moving toward the learn it all culture.
So Karen, David poses a comment that really is more of a question, I think, and that is that sometimes you have key stakeholders who have a financial or emotional or whatever interest in what they know, or they're very comfortable with, or really rooted in how things have always been. What are some suggestions you have about getting them comfortable with this idea, challenging kind of their current mindset and getting them comfortable with this idea of discovery when they are so rooted in one of those things, financial or emotional attachment?
Right. To me, where I've seen it work in organizations and with leaders is through experience. It's not through talking. So the experience could be an everyday experience. So it's not about launching discovery projects or even change projects and putting discovery in them. It's about engaging to discover better solutions. And so I would say it's the experience. It's the walking with, maybe going to customers. I'm not, you can think about the particular situations that you're looking at. But if it's a customer issue or a financial issue, then find some site or situation that you could visit with that person, and you ask discovery-oriented questions without you having to say that you're doing discovery-oriented questions, but you're open and trying to engage them. Now, there may come a point where the person, it's an end in itself. It's not a means to an end, or it's not a thoughtful dialogue, and they may not change. They may have what I've called belief rigidity, where there's no way of changing maybe that particular belief, or and I've seen some of those around the where to work issue, actually, and it's hard to do that, and you may not be able to do it with that, but you really want to cultivate the belief flexibility, which is central to discovery. It doesn't mean that you have no beliefs. It just means that you're able to entertain and challenge the beliefs. So hopefully that begins, but to me, it is experience. Get out into a situation, or you walk with the customers, you do the walking with kind of notion here, or you go to the customer's locations, or you go to the place where services are delivered and the financial impact is felt. You think kind of outside the box around where might you go with that person, and so that you can engage in a conversation with them, and that they importantly can see what's happening there and experience that. So, okay. So we're going to return to discovery. Cook, Korea, I might add Nadella, chose discovery. My book showcases dozens of stories of other leaders I've mentioned who also chose discovery to unleash deep creativity for change. This is creativity on the part of a larger group. It's not creative design kinds of things, but it's creative in the sense that we alter our beliefs and practices. We're able to engage, let go, loosen the hold of beliefs on us, and engage to see what kinds of beliefs and practices we might rethink and reinvent and recreate. So rethinking is a critical part, a link up partner with discovery. that deliver the positive results with positive impact. Everyone benefits from this, but it's not easy. It requires persistence. I mean, years for into it. A willingness to challenge and change beliefs, and the courage to try. But the stories and research I've done shows it's absolutely worth it. So we'll have other conversation. I want to end this part of it with, I wish you many insights, some generative doubt, not doubt of self-doubt, but doubt of the generative kind, where you're able to look at new possibilities, and beaucoup new perspectives as you continue your return to discovery. So thank you for today and for the questions, and I look forward to more as we engage this. So Pam, I'd love to move to the questions at this point, and I'll stop sharing.
We have just a couple of additional questions that have come in, Karen, and I want to go back to one that was talking about the pace. There was kind of a follow-on comment, and that is, pace is so important today. And how we might help those leaders who are concerned that, well, that's just going to take too much time. Because I will tell you, our experience in working with our clients, some of our more senior leaders, with two clients in particular, have actually said to their folks, problem or process over people. Because, and what they mean by that is, take the time to really discover what the real problem is that you're trying to solve before throwing additional people resources at it to try to overcome it, because sometimes you're solving the wrong problem. And ultimately, it's about working slow to working fast so that you can work fast, right? And so, if you have other ideas around that, we'd love to hear those. If not, I've got a couple of other questions before we wrap up today.
Okay, let me just give one comment about that. I love that. I've heard about it, but I have not seen it in action. So it's really cool. I would ask that you might reframe a problem to problematic situation, because problem can be pretty cognitive in the head, and we generate more limited thing. A problematic situation is, again, getting out. So very much experience-based and exploring what that problematic situation looks like, because it could have a diffuse quality that we need to kind of grab hold of. And that's when discovery often happens.
Great. And then Karen, I actually realized, I think you had a slide on this, but one of the participants messaged us and said, what are some other resources that I could use to kind of help get me going? Of course, you have your recently published book, of course.
I do. Well, and actually, I've had so many questions for those resources. I've started a website, and it's dedicated to discovery, and it's dedicated to discovery for professionals and leaders, as well as researchers, because there's a similar kind of a paucity of discovery in science. And so both of those, and please, I actually, maybe the last slide I can give to you, Pam, and maybe it can go out to people. Thank you. Yes, the quiz. It came up in chat. I was going to say, please take the quiz, and then without the discovery quiz, that is my Karen Golden-Biddle. It's a mouthful. .com. So to remember, but that is the website. And so I've just started. I'm going to have a discussion that I have discussion guides to post for the book, and then also the quiz, though. And Pam, I noticed you took it yesterday.
Yes, I did. I was so curious about it. So Karen, I guess we've got time for this one last question. David asks, what process do you employ to get employees at all levels to engage in discovery of their process, to really optimize and integrate within the organization, kind of both now and into the future?
But that's a big question around that. So number one, but so it seems to work best when there's a real situation that they're working on, that it's not just a separate kind of initiative, but you're going to be solving something that matters in the work. So that's the first thing. And then what I've seen with the leaders who've done discovery at various levels. I mean, this is anyone who calls themselves a leader or is in a leadership position. It's not just formal hierarchy here that I'm talking about. Really can take pieces of that and work and broaden the coalition or the stakeholder group that's involved. And so that would be Scott Cook went with his team, and Catherine Correa really broadened it further. We've seen a global collaboration with guinea worm eradication. Certainly Microsoft has done a number of different kinds of collaborations inside and outside the organization. So it's bring others in early.
Mhm. Great, great. Well, Karen, we can't thank you enough for joining us today. A fun conversation. I think that each of us, regardless of where we are on our journey of being curious and opening up to discovery, have opportunities to improve. And that's what intrigued me about your quiz. It was fun to take. It made me think about things. And, I look forward to seeing even more resources. So thanks again for joining us.
And may I say thank you. The questions have been great. I've tried to jot some notes down because I always learn when I do these. So I much appreciate today. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, I'm going to share just a few things about what's coming next, especially for Business Over Breakfast. We have intriguing topics as always. So coming up next, let me move my chat out of the way here. Close that down. And all right. So coming up on June 20th, we have a session on creating high functioning teams, and we'll look at communication versus conversation and real dialogue with Clint Pageant. Clint is an expert in leading huge project and change initiatives and has been involved in Olympics planning for years, so you won't want to miss that. We're going to take a hiatus during the week of July 4th so that we all can celebrate the July 4th holiday. And then on July 18th, we will have your personal board of directors, why you need one, and how in the world you build it with Donna Peters. And as always, I will remind you of the upcoming sessions with Emory Executive Education. I love emphasizing our Executive Women's Leadership Program. Whether you are a male or female joining us today, I'm certain that you have women in your network that could benefit from this important and highly immersive hybrid delivery program. Kicks off in mid-September, concludes in October, so there are virtual and in-person sessions. And also, you'll see here the list of our MBA level courses. Whether you have them for credit or not, they're an excellent way to dip your toe in the water or get a refresher on some things you already learned when you were in school. Thanks again for joining us today. We love having you. We love all the great questions that come in, and we are looking forward to seeing you next time. And until then, enjoy as we kick into summer and kids are having a lot of fun. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next time.